Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Boys. A great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Let's start off with the Homelander stuff. Obviously, he is pissed about this whole Stormfront situation, and I love it. Like, it's just seeing him so, because like all of season one, he always just seemed like he seemed irritated from time to time, but it always seemed like he was always like, oh, I'm kind of in control, and now just all that control is slipping away from him, and Stormfront is kind of taking the lead charge and everything, you know, because he thought he was hot shit, that he was special, that he was at the top of everything, and now it's like all that's being taken away from him. Then he goes off to some cabin and Madeline's there. At no point did I think like, there's no way she's alive. I was like, this has got to be in his head, but then it goes on for a long time. I'm like, she can't be alive. He literally lasered her face off. It's like, there's no way. I mean, more so her eyes, but still, it's like, there's no way. And it turns out it's Doppelganger. I was like, okay, of course. I like that, because obviously we know he exists in his universe because he was in season one. But it's like, oh my God. And like, obviously, Homelander getting pissed about it. He's like, turn yourself back, like, hurry up. And he's like, yeah, because it's like, Doppelganger's there as Madeline to conflate his ego, because obviously he misses her, and what would she do? She would coddle him, make him feel special. She, what's a person, like, obviously we know he has mommy issues. Big time, like he's all messed up when it comes to love and everything. So for him, it's like the person that made him feel good, the one that kind of made him feel special, and it's like reminding him, it's like, oh no, the 7 isn't anything without you. He's like, right, and he kind of slips back into the fantasy, because first it takes a little while, but eventually he goes, I'm good. So he proceeds to basically, it's like, you formed the 7, you can make a new 7. So we see at one point he's kicking A-Train out and bringing in Shockwave. I felt so bad for Ashley. Ashley's like, no, he's here for like the Heroes of Tots or something like that. And it's like, oh, because apparently children these days are obese, and he's like, come on, put me in there. I love fat kids. But then it's like, Homelander not even beating around the bush. She's like, yeah, you're out. Shockwave's in. He's like, what? But she's like, but you, oh my God, you're going to have your own reality TV show. Everything's going to be fine. But he's like, no, I'm not going anywhere. Homelander's like, we know what the deal is. He's like, I know it's your heart. So the fact of the matter is, you're probably not even the top 20 anymore. So he's like, yeah, but he's like, this, trust me, I didn't come at this as an easy decision. It was a hard decision for me. And he looks at me, he just doesn't even let A-Train to say anything. He's like, attaboy, and walks away, because he's done playing around. You have the whole Black Noir situation where Black Noir just like creeps up on, what's her name, Anika, and she's like, oh, Black Noir, what are you doing here? And he has a note, and it has Butcher written on it. She's like, oh, you want me to look? It's like, well, this is the last time we saw him, so I'll keep looking for him. Or I can keep looking right now. She starts looking, and then he sits down right beside her, and she's like, and you could join me. I'm like, I love how creepy he is, It's just like, because she was in the middle of eating like an almond joy, so he's like, which I love that comes up again in the episode. We'll get to this soon enough, but it's like, she's like, do you want one? And he just like holds out a basket, like, no, put down the damn candy bar and get to work. Obviously without the words, but so there's all of that, and I thought that was kind of fascinating in its own right. Because part of me was wondering why he's so adamant after going after Butcher. Part of me wonders, did he care about Madeline, and it's like in his mind, it's like, oh, you killed Madeline, even though that's not the truth. We know that was Homeland, but I wonder, is that what it is? Because I'm like, why are you going after Butcher specifically? He's not even looking for the others. He's looking for Billy specifically. So is there some kind of connection there or something? Like, why that? That's what I'm curious about. But aside from all that, comes with a complicated situation of, because of everything going on, Starlight and Homelander, like, he is threatening to kill her. It's like, oh, I told you to kill Huey and you hesitated. And she was like, okay. And she was able to kind of lie her way out of it by being like, oh, it's not really a lie. It was actually kind of speaking a little bit truthfully, because she was like, why would I, care about Huey? He's the one that broke my heart in a way no one else had. So the fact of the matter is, you're mad because I wasn't a murderer like you'd kind of want me to be. Like, go ahead and kill me then. And he was like, she's like, so am I lying? He's like, you're not lying, which she was able to kind of skate by, because she's like, truth be told, she isn't with Huey, because all that she did say was the truth. So then there's also the thing of Homelander, because he's cleaning up shop. So we never really get to see, like, him confront Black Noir. Because, I mean, remember last season, he said, like, everyone's screwing up, except for you, Black Noir. doing a great job. So it's like Black Noir's in the state, clear with that whole thing. So even if he were to reboot the entire 7, he'd probably keep Black Noir because it's like, nah, bro, you always doing a good job, man. But he's on TV and everything with Maria Menounos, and there's coming up the questions about like, you know, Compound V and stuff like that. And then they start really breaking it down. It's like, you know, 92% of heroes are Caucasian, like 6 is African American, and then 1's Asian and Latino each. You know, so it's like, Voss, you know, why doesn't Voss diversify? And it's like, oh, he's like, look at you with the hard-hitting questions, Maria Menounos. Which I love that just Maria Menounos being herself, you know, regardless. But the fact of the matter is, he's like, the fact of the matter is, I mean, look at the 7. You know, A-Train, he's black, and Black Noir is, well, he doesn't even, you know, identify with any particular race. So he's like, we got one of those. And it's like, the fact that you say it like that too. And he's like, oh, we even have a gay hero amongst the 7. And I'm like, what? And it's like, oh yeah, Queen Maeve. Oh, she's gay. She has a girlfriend named Elena, and she's Hispanic. So, oh, look at the diversity there. And it's like, you piece of shit. And Maeve's got a smile and everything, because it's like, damn it, he knows about Elena. The moment the thing was over, she's like, what'd you do with Elena? Because she was terrified. He's like, oh, why would you think I did something to her? You know, because the way he talks and stuff, it does make me wonder, like, is he a little, like, because some people have made comparisons of just kind of like, you know, does he look at Maeve in a way of like, you're disgusting because you're gay? Like, because he's supposed to be kind of like the most radical, extreme version of the all-American boy. Like, he's supposed to be like the most extreme version of that. So part of me wondering is that what that's supposed to represent in his case? You know, is he kind of, he's like, she's like, I broke up with her the moment I joined the 7. He's like, no more lies. And it's the thing, she's like, okay, we're still together. He's like, good, I'm happy for you. And he's like, I'm really, really happy. He's like, why wouldn't I be? And it's like, your facial expressions say otherwise. So it's like, because I mean, once again, Maeve was scared because it's like, you know, I'm sure for her still a thing of, I need to check on. I'm surprised he did. I guess like he kicked A-Train out, but he didn't kick Maeve out, because it's like, you know, I mean, we already know what he did to the last person who lied to him, that being Madeline. So it's like, it's hard to say with him, like. And the way someone else put it perfectly more recently is like, you never know what's going to set him off, because he just. Like I said, he seems even more of a wildfire this season. Like he was already kind of all over the place a little bit last season, but it felt at least a tiny bit more controlled. He's like free reign and he's just super pissed, and he's just taking that rage out on anybody. I mean, it was already the case anyway. I mean, obviously things aren't working out with your relationship with your son, so there's that. There's this whole Stormfront situation of her stealing everything from you, you know? Dude, the fucking memes. Holy shit. There was like the one of Black Noir where it's like, oh here's the this whole situation, here's the tea sis or something like that. I was like, holy shit. Then there's one where someone photoshopped her face on Homelander's body. I'm like, I'm loving this. It's like, they're fucking memes. I was like, of course memes are a thing this day. Like, everything gets memed. So of course it would happen in this. It's really messed up because she basically admits like, oh, like I got 5 dudes, like people making memes for me, and I was able to kind of take it, like, you've got like so many people in love with you and stuff like that. You had $200 and some million put behind you with this whole Save America thing. I have like 5 people with computers basically able to undo you with memes, and it's like, holy shit. Shows you how powerful memes can be, and they can easily change people's perspective. You know, it just, he float out a few of those, and people are like, oh, that's funny, but it's actually kind of a little reflective of actually how I feel. It's interesting when you break that down on that level and lane, but it's just like, he did not appreciate the memes. He's just clicking through it, click. So many damn memes. It's fucking bananas. And I like that whole thing of him confronting Stormfront. Now, from that scene, I walked away from not knowing, is she actually scared of him or not? Because the moment he pulled out the heat vision out, she's like, whoa, calm down. But I'm like, are you actually afraid of him, or are you doing that just to placate him a little bit? I don't know. But obviously for her, it's like, you've trying to get like 50 million people to love you. It's like, you don't need 50 people to love you. You need 5 million people pissed. She's like, you don't need people who love you. You need soldiers for this fight. She's just like, I'm just trying to help. And I'm like, no. Like, obviously other stuff in the episode, we'll get to it soon enough, but it's like, you definitely have your own agenda. And I'm just like, I don't know. Because it even goes against what I was bringing up before. I'm like, I thought she was going to be like Vought's golden girl or something like that, whereas like Homelander was her golden boy, like she's the new golden girl. And that's why I'm like, am I wrong about that? Because I'm like, why would Stan put her in the 7 just for her to basically spend her entire time shitting on VOD? That's why I'm like, but I guess it's like, if you can get an outsider to do that. Like, because it's like, there's no way Edgar didn't put her on the team for a purpose. That's the point. He specifically chose her. So that's why I'm like, I don't get it. Like this, I mean, Edgar must be playing like 3D chess. He must be moves ahead, because it's like, everything's kind of working out in his favor, because like, you know, it's like, oh, Homelander said all that shit last episode about like, oh yeah, but now Stormfront's like the star of it, and Edgar came out smelling like roses because of this whole Compound V situation. So I don't know what to make of like her. And just like, you know, it's like, oh, I'm here to help you, because he was basically like, I don't need your help, I don't need anyone. He walks away. She's like, yeah, I'm here if you ever need a change, you know, the change. And I'm just like, I don't know what to make of her, dude. It's like, we already know she's a dastardly bastard. I didn't realize this until other people had really pointed it out, that if you realize going back to episode 3, everyone she killed in that building was black. I already knew she was racist because the fact that she, you know, told Kimiko's brother, like, oh, you fucking yellow bastard. It didn't correlate until like I rewatched the scene. I'm like, holy shit. Like, literally all 4 people that we saw her kill on screen were black. And I was like, oh, that racism runs even deeper than I thought it did. That's why I'm like, I don't know if like Homelander's bigoted. I think he is, but it's just like, at the very least, he's a little bit better at hiding it. But I think like the whole Maeve thing made it kind of creepy. Like, I don't know whether that's a bigotry thing or whether it's just kind of your mind thing. Like, I mean, who says it can't be both? It's probably like your mind, but now I found out you're gay and it just irks my nerves. Like, I don't know. At the very least, Stormfront, we know where it is, where she stands in the whole thing, you know? So that was an interesting side to this whole episode. Obviously, another thing too is the whole Frenchie thing. I thought was kind of fascinating, because obviously Frenchie's getting high, and you know, he's trying to console Kimiko, because Kimiko's watching all the news talk about her brother being this terrorist, this monster, Stormfront saved the day and everything, and he's there trying to help her, and he kisses her, which is like the wrong thing. He's like, I'm sorry, and she literally took his head off because of it. But then, you know, he ends up showing up at Cherry's place. They bang it out, but then she's like, all right, so are you going to ruin my sheets with all your despair? And he's like, I try to kiss. She's like, oh, Kimiko. He's like, I just wanted to help her. And she puts things in a very interesting perspective. It's like, you're trying to help Kimiko because you think it's going to make amends for your mistakes. So those kids that were killed by Lamplighter, that being Mallory's grandkids, if I remember correctly from last season, they referenced that. So it's like you're trying to make up for that stuff specifically, because you can save her, you think, you know, but, you know, and obviously he's like, you don't know how it is, but obviously Cherry kind of knows him better than anyone, and it's kind of like, don't be with her, just leave her alone, just let her grieve, you know. And he's like, but what does grieving alone ever do, you know? And he actually found her like in a crowd, like Stormfront's doing a little bit of a gathering and everything. And she got closer, and I thought was so interesting is like, you see her thinking back to what Stormfront did to her and her brother, and she stops for a second because she was mad and angry, but I think for a moment she got scared, because it's like, she's stronger than me, or at the very least, I think that crossed her mind of like, you know, because I think it could be a combination, just thinking like, my brother died because he was protecting me. He could have gotten away, but he, you know, plus this woman almost killed me too. So it's like, I think all that just kind of hit her, but she was even more pissed, but Frenchie stopped her. He's like, don't do this. You won't survive. But obviously for Kimiko, it's just like, what can I do? I'm so angry. I want this woman dead, you know? She killed the only family I have left in this world is dead because of her. So it's like, you know, and obviously Frenchie cares about her deeply, and it's just like, I think that's going to be a beautiful aspect to this thing. It's because, for one, he can't communicate with Kimiko like her brother can, so it's even more of there's an even bigger wall between them, because it's like, what she's going through right now, he feels like he can't help her, he can't communicate with her because he doesn't know that sign language that they created. So it's a thing of like, he doesn't know what to do, and I think that's such an interesting aspect for their story, you know? To be in that, because obviously Kimiko blames herself. It's like, you know, and I think, like I said, that guilt, I think, is what kind of kicked in during that whole Stormfront situation as she was kind of approaching him. I was like, oh, is she about to do this in front of everyone? Because, you know, it probably, all it would do, her attacking would just fuel the fire to Stormfront's thing of like, oh yeah, the terrorists, they could be right beside you and everything, you know? So there's that whole side of thing. Obviously, Billy ends up leaving MM in charge because Mallory gives him, and it's like, oh yeah, here's the address to Becca, and he's like, but I didn't hold up my end of the deal. She was like, idiot, I'm giving this to you, because for her, she had talked about the recurring dream, and I thought, like, for her, it's like she's on a stage, and in the crowd is basically everyone that's ever been killed by a super, and she was like, they're not doing anything. They're just waiting for me to do something, you know. And for her, it's like she's like, oh, I put a target on Homelander's back and I pointed you at him. She's like, I didn't know Becca was still alive, and if I had, like, I would have obviously done things differently. So for her, she's trying to make up for the path that she put Billy down. Plus, also, like, this is your chance to get back that person you care about. Plus, it can at least remove at least one person from those seats in that recurring dream she has, you know. Because obviously this whole situation just went sideways. They're no closer to finding out who it was that actually killed Raynor. So when it's all said and done, obviously Butcher's going to go save Becca, and even MM's like, well, what about us? What about the Spice Girls? And he was like, you be in charge. He's like, I don't want to be fucking in charge, but it's kind of like, you know, what about Frenchie? Frenchie's spending the entire time being high. What about Huey? Huey's a weeper. You know, if I tell him that I'm leaving, like, he'll cry. So it's like, yeah, I leave this to you, you know? So it's, once again, it's that thing of like, Billy getting what he wants and kind of leaving the others high and dry. It's like, you do this every time you show up, you know, because it's like, oh, Mallory, she can help you get closer to, you know, being reunited with your family. Even see like MM looking at the dollhouse he was building and everything. And obviously Huey meeting up with Annie. They're talking a little bit because obviously Annie's like, oh my God, look what I did to you. For him, it's like, it's good. It's okay. Because the way I looked at it is last episode, Huey was okay with accepting his death because I don't think he'd say it. But if it meant making sure that she survived, he'd happily die, you know, especially her being his second win. It's like, if I had to die so that you survive, I think he would have been okay with that. That's what I took at, like, when he's closing his eyes and just kind of accepting his death. To be fair, he wasn't in the best mindset at the time. He was he was broken. He was lost. He was just kind of like, kind of gave up, you know? So I think that all kind of plays a role in all of that. But obviously for Annie, she's like, I can't go back to the tower. And so she tags along with you, and Emma's like, we can't take her along with us. It's like, come on, we're potentially going to run into Soups. If we run into Soups, why not have one of our own? And he's like, come on, she needs this. And then Emma's like, does she need this or do you need it? And even Huey kind of, you know, he doesn't say anything, but his expression kind of meant, it's like, I do need this, you know? So, you know, she tags along, and because they're going to North Carolina, because she's able to use this as an excuse because she has a cousin down there. What I thought was interesting, when they're driving, there's like a billboard that says like, your abortion could be the next super, your baby could be super, or something like that. I thought that was so interesting because obviously, like, depending on the states, I feel I could be mistaken. Like, obviously, like, I think the South is generally anti-abortion. I think typically, you know, even as someone from North Carolina, I'm not sure on that. I won't speak on that because I think it is, but I'm not sure. But I thought that was so interesting because obviously an angle to this is like, you know, obviously it varies from state to state, laws about abortion, but also like there's a religious angle to it, like God wouldn't want you to do it, you're killing a soul and everything, like that kind of thing. And now it seems like there's, in this world, there's an extra layer of guilt to it, being like, oh, if you do this, you could be killing the next superhero, kind of guilting you in that, right? And I thought that was like an interesting way for this world to take, obviously, a real world thing and add its own commentary by including their superhero situation to it. I don't know why. I thought that was just something that stood out to me. I was like, oh, that's so fascinating. There's even the fact is that on the side of a barn, it was Homelander with his American flag being a Confederate flag. Oh, that was interesting. Once again, just interesting commentary there. I'm just like, oh, I see that here and there. I'm like, oh, I thought that was kind of interesting. In the grand scheme of things, they also brought up something else I thought was kind of interesting. They were like, oh, Liberty? I was like, oh, yeah, this is the woman you mentioned last time. Mallory was like, oh, yeah, she was active in the 70s. I was like, I don't know they've ever mentioned in this world how long this superhero thing's been going on. So there's been superheroes at the very least since the set. Like, I don't know. I guess I thought it was more of a modern age. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, because a lot of these heroes are like definitely older, so they've been around a while. So like, but it's neat to we might kind of learn more about like, well, because obviously we know superheroes go back a long ways because I didn't even think about it. But it's like, right, Edgar mentioned like the scientist from World War II, the founder of VOT, has been working on Compound V since like World War II, since like the 40s, or at least a version of it back then. Or like, I think it was like 39, whatever the case may be. So it's like, of course, heroes would have been around for a while. And it's going to be interesting. I mean, maybe this season we'll kind of dive into the very early. I mean, we got our little taste of it with the whole the founder of VOT. But maybe it's eventually we're going to tie this all into like, OG heroes, especially because maybe part of me wonders, is the Liberty storyline going to tie into that? But before we even get to that, I do like the kind of like, road trip. I love like Starlight being like, oh, can you mind we put on some music? Turn on the music. It's her singing. She's like, Jesus. He was like, oh man, you have a really nice voice. She's like, all right. She changed it to a different station. It's her again. She's like, come on. And they put on a song and I love it. And they're both singing along too. And then MM had to stop them. It's like, this isn't a damn date and I'm not your chaperone. It was a sweet moment they had that he kind of crashed. But, what I also thought this was an interesting situation is it brought like MM and Starlight together because they had a conversation. Because obviously for her, she's enjoying the donut and everything. And it's like, oh yeah, like she was never able to enjoy stuff like that because of her mom and everything. But it's like, oh, my dad, used to sneak her off to get donuts or whatever. And, it's like he would ask me all the time, like despite everything, he would ask me how was my day. And it was kind of a little bit of it because obviously that's a conversation we haven't talked about. Last season, she found out like, wait, that's why dad left because he signed the contract, but he couldn't deal with this. So he bounced. It's like, so where is her dad? Obviously she's on the outs of her mom. Maybe this season could be her trying to rekindle things with her dad. But MM brought up his dad. He's like, oh yeah, my dad used to take me to like, he'd, what was it, like Baskin Robbins, and he sampled like the 31 different flavors. People like, yo man, get your fucking ice cream and go. He's like, nah, can I get this? It was this nice moment, and then both sharing, it's like, oh, but his dad died 16 years ago, and it's like, and then the whole father and sugar. I just thought that was a nice moment because like, the only person from that group Annie really has a relationship with, like in a sense of just outside of like the seven, the only person she has a relationship with is Huey. So it's neat kind of getting that moment too, because it also gave us an opportunity to learn about MM. We know next to nothing about a lot of the people. Like we knew a little bit about Frenchie, we knew a little bit about MM, but that's about it. But this was an opportunity to learn more about them. And then obviously he's like, whoa, are you dry wiping? She's like, dry wiping. He's like, no, here, brings out some wipes because it's like, you wiping like that, that's not doing anything, it's just spreading. Then there's an accident. She wants to step in there like, whoa, we're supposed to be low key. There's people around. Like, the fact is, and I think that speaks a lot about Starlight, despite everything, she just wants to jump in there. Whoa, these are people here. These people are hurt. Like, I could do something. I'm a hero, but it's like, you can't, we're low key. But when they show up at that lady's place and they're knocking on her door, she wants nothing to do with them because at first she thinks they're VOD. But then they had to be like, no, we're not. Then we get some real insight to MM's life. He's like, my dad was a lawyer. And he was like, wait, what? And it turns out his dad fought VOD for a long time because his dad, for him, it's like, he's like, no one's going to listen to this one black man when you're going up against a company like VOD. So he was like, but his dad did everything he could to take down VOD because of all the stuff that they were connected to. And he talked about the fact that he'd always hear his dad on like the typewriter and stuff like that, But, whatever he did against VOD pulled out its lawyers, but it didn't stop him until one day when his dad was 55, he died. And, he had woken up and not heard his dad's typing. So for him, it's like, my dad's battle passed on to me. So now we understand why MM is just as dedicated to this fight because his dad was dedicated to the fight. So they end up talking to the lady and she's like, I don't know what something from 48 years ago is going to matter. And it's interesting because, and I think that's the beautiful nature of what they've constructed here, because her story is very similar to Huey's in this. I mean, and it's not just Huey's. I mean, it's a lot of people. A lot of people have lost people they care about to Soups. We learned that like Liberty attacked her brother because it's like, oh, this car was so, he's like, but you're a hero. And she's like, who's going to believe she referenced like him being black or like a black person like you or something. Like she obviously, and it's like the moment that came out, I was like, is that Stormfront? But even I was like, yeah, but this was from the 70s. How could that be the case? But then like the lady was like, oh no, she's still alive and well. Because hearing her story, Huey was looking at Annie because obviously, it probably reminded him of Robin. Damn it, if they didn't show that lady's brother on the hood, his face messed up, blood. I was like, holy shit, I wasn't expecting you to show us his face. But then it turns out she points to Stormfront and it's like, that's the woman, that's Liberty from all those years ago. Because, Vought paid her $2,000. Once again, like, Huey knows because they wanted to pay for his silence as well. It's like, how many other people out there were paid for their silence when heroes kind of felt they could do whatever the hell they want to. So I thought that was so interesting in that regard, especially in the sense that, it's like, wait, Stormfront, she would have to be in like, what, her 70s? And it's like, well, we don't know the effects of Compound V. Like, her whole thing could be like, maybe because we know A-Train's been taking Compound V, so he was able, but obviously we see the strain it put on him. So that's why I'm wondering, like, why isn't Stormfront feeling any effects? Like, if she was taking extra Compound V on top of it, like, what if Stormfront? Because when you look at that situation, all she used in that time was her superhuman strength. So what if she actually has multiple powers? Like, she reinvented herself as Stormfront, but maybe she kind of has like an osmosis thing, kind of like Peter from Heroes, where his initial ability was an osmosis ability. He's around people, he could gain their abilities, and in the beginning, Peter could have every ability under the sun. Eventually, when he got the power back, obviously, like, he had injected himself, and the power only allowed him to have one at a time. So it makes me wonder, is that her power? Is she kind of an osmosis soup, or is it something going on here that, like, does she interchange abilities? So it's like, oh, I want me some lightning, maybe it's a different version of Compound V that Vought hooked her up with. Whatever the case may be, she's been around since the 70s, so why? That's what I'm wondering. And she references, like, oh, this guy came to visit me. Part of me was wondering, do you think that man was Edgar, or could this be, because obviously it's a situation of, like, the community they live in. It's like, no one's really going to, especially in this world, listen to, like, a black community about a hero. But her parents were the ones that kind of said no and signed a deal and everything. So this Liberty situation is getting even more interesting. Like, trust me, I don't know why. It's just something, like, the fact is they brought it up last episode made me think, like, there has to be a connection between her. Like, I had a feeling like Stormfront had, reinvented herself. But once again, the purpose of why, though? And, Vought obviously knows about that. They're the only ones that, because even she said, like, oh, no, like, she even referenced it to Homelander, like, oh, yeah, like, I kind of know about reinventing yourself. Like, she's done it herself. I mean, who's to say who's to say Stormfront's the first time? Maybe she's had, other personas since then. She's been other heroes, or maybe she was other heroes before she was Liberty. We don't know. Like, I mean, it's like, oh, she's like, could be potentially 70 looking the way she does. Who's to say she's not even older than what she is? So this, once again, she might be our tie to, like, the beginnings of Compound V. She might, like, go even that, that far back type of situation. Who knows? I'm really interested to find out, like, what the hell her whole deal is. So another side of this is the whole Billy situation. Billy, sneaking in, having his moments with Becca and everything. And he's all about, about, like, oh, what he's been through, and also, he said something I thought was kind of interesting, where he was just kind of like, oh, I'm going to get you out of here. She's like, oh, yeah, Ryan. The moment she mentioned Ryan, because I never thought about it before, I was like, right. Obviously, Billy's got his issues when it comes to supers. It's not just Homelander, but Homelander is the crux of why he has the issue he does with soup. Because he looks at Homelander as like, oh, all soups are the same. To be fair, he's come to know so many soups who've done terrible shit and have been able to get away with it. So for him, it's like all superheroes are terrible people. So the fact of the matter is, it never crossed my mind to think, like, eventually that bridge is going to get crossed about the whole Ryan thing, because Ryan's a soup too, and so you can tell the reluctancy in his voice, but then he tries to make an effort because, it's Becca, because regardless of everything, that's your son. Not only is he a soup, though, he's Homelander's son. Homelander, the same Homelander you want to kill because you thought he killed your wife after he raped your wife. So it's like, you are going to have so many emotions towards supers in general, but definitely this particular child soup, but it's the thing of, like, she doesn't want to leave her son behind, because if I leave him behind, what I'm going to do, let him get raised without a mother, then we're literally going to have two Homelanders. This world already has one big enough asshole with Homelander. We don't need more. We don't need another Homelander in the making. Truth be told is, him learning the truth about everything, about his circumstances, might lead to him becoming Homelander anyway. So, like, even when you try to nurture the Homelander out of him, you can almost make the argument, maybe it's so ingrained in his destiny. Once again, it's like nature versus nurture type of situation. Like, I mean, his nurture could be the means to lead him down that path of being, a Homelander, because he, regardless of having a mother, he's still an experiment that she lied to him. Like, obviously Homelander, we see how he handles being lied to, so Ryan could be the same way. Once again, there's so much that could be foreshadowing in that regard, that sadly the cycle, despite everything, ends up, sadly repeating itself, but, we'll see. But, Billy and her spend time together, and she even asked Billy what he's been up to, and he's like, oh yeah, like, started a company, bar mitzvahs and stuff like that. She's like, bullshit. He kind of lays it out like, hey, all right, the fact of the matter is, I thought Homelander killed you, so I've been gunning for him, because, like, Homelander kind of let it slip, like, oh yeah, Billy's been coming after me for years, you know. I didn't even talk about it, but like that was the thing about Homelander and the whole Elena thing. Like he overheard the conversation, and so he did a little digging. So that also says a lot too. But regardless of all of that, when it's all said and done, though, obviously Becca feels bad because she's like, I'm the reason why you went down this path, so she feels a little regret about it and everything. And obviously it's like, all right, we'll get out of here, we'll bring Ryan and everything. But when Becca shows up again, she doesn't have Ryan because she's like, I saw it in your face, because she basically, she had also told him, like, when I made a deal with Homelander that, you know, he spares your life, because if he doesn't, I will kill myself in front of Ryan and I will tell him it's your fault, you know, Homelander's fault. And he's like, oh, like, you have these talents. He's like, so Homelander didn't know that you were bluffing? She's like, I wasn't bluffing, you know. And I think that speaks volumes of just like the situation she was in, you know, and also shows you how much she cares for Butcher, that she was willing to go down that route for him. But obviously, as you know, it's like, but she's trying to also say, like, oh, my son, he's nothing like Homelander. He's sweet, he's super smart and everything. But despite all that, you can still tell Butcher's reluctance, and she could tell. So she was like, you don't want to, like, even if you take Ryan with this now, eventually you'll find some way to kind of push him away because of just, you know, your distaste for soups and everything. But it's like, for him, it's like, you and me, we could get away because it's not about us. Vought is never going to let Ryan go away and, you know, get away. And so for her, it's a thing of like, she's kind of torn between like, I'm not about to leave my child behind. And even, you know, he let his bias slip and he's like, that kid's a little super freak. And it's like, I'm sorry, that's not what I meant. It's like, it's exactly what you meant, because that's exactly how you feel. You've been fighting it, because obviously for him, it's like, he wants his love back. He wants Becca back, but you know, it comes with the contingency of taking Ryan. But she's like, no, like, but also for her, it's like, I know what part of what world you're in. You're on a war path. And she even says, like, your situation wasn't just me. Mine wasn't it was just the last straw, essentially. Because she's like, even when we were together, I always knew you were like one meltdown away from like losing your shit. So it's just like, losing her just happened to be that catalyst, but it would have been anything. It was just only a matter of time. So basically saying, like, whatever Billy's issues are, like this war front, it would have gotten here sooner or later, even without me. It's just, it started with you. So it's like, what in Billy's past put him down? Like, maybe his distaste of soups actually runs a little deeper. I mean, once again, we know nothing about the boys. We don't know a lot of their past. We're learning bits and pieces. Like I said, we learned about MMs this episode. So maybe there's stuff in Billy's past connected to why his distaste of soups kind of runs deep. I mean, we kind of understand why MM's taste for this runs deep. Because it's so interesting, because it's almost like, and the way MM puts it, I think is so interesting. It's a disease. Because for him, it's like, my dad died of a disease. His obsession with taking down Vought, probably the stress of it all finally killed him. And he's like, that disease passed down to me. He's like, I don't want that disease to pass down to my daughter. I don't want this, because it's like, once this gets in your system, there's no getting it out. Because obviously that's why he's here now. 16 years later, I'm carrying on that torch my father, you know, started. And it's like, you know, I don't want to be in a position where my daughter has to carry that on because of me, you know, so I think that disease exists inside of Billy, but the question is, why does it? Is it a similar situation to MM? Is it something else? Like, what is that, you know? I mean, is it even just a soup thing? Like, was that rage and everything there outside of the soup situation? Like I said, who knows? You know, something actually kind of clicked across my mind now. Because remember, her brother brought it up. Was it last episode? That, no, it was episode 2 where he brought up the fact is that there was a superhero that ripped ripped people in half or whatever. I kept thinking it had to be Homelander, but he never said anything when they confronted Homelander. If it was Homelander, I feel like he would have went much harder after Homelander than he did. He would have just been all about, like, oh, let me kill this SOB for what you did. So now part of me is wondering, is like, maybe that particular, like, maybe that ties into Stormfront, aka Liberty, like her whole thing. Like, maybe there's a tie into that. Maybe she is that hero. Once again, showing you, like, you know, like I said, there's a lot more to that character I'm so curious about. But to the point, you know, Becca, you know, not wanting to get caught up in this war of Billy, she's like, she activates the device and it's like, oh, you got 60 seconds to get out of here or you're captured. And so she's kind of torn between this thing because obviously she loves Billy, Billy loves her, but for her it's like, I can't be a part of that world. I got to do what's best for my son. And Vought would never leave us alone if I took him with us. And the fact of the matter is, you would never fully accept him. And this is my son, and I love him. And so it's a hard choice to make. As a mother and a wife, like, do I go with the man I love, or do I look after the best interest of my child? Once again, it's like I can't leave him behind, because if I do, like, he might grow up to be Homelander. It's like she sees how sweet he is, that he is nothing like Homelander. Once again, that could always change. So there's that. So Billy ends up leaving, but circling back to the Black Noir thing, we do see him knowing where Billy is, so that's going to be a thing. Then also, finally, we had the Homelander thing, him returning to Doppelganger, who's still pretending to be Madeline, but it's like the fantasy wore off and everything, so it's like he doesn't like it anymore. But then it's like he's like, I don't need anyone, and then I just need myself. And then he turns into Homelander. He's like, oh, like, do you see how hot you are and how special you are? It's like, I will suck. Well, he's basically like, I'll suck your cock so hard that you'll be looking in your own eyes when you come. I was like, Jesus. I was like, yo. And he was like, and it's not even gay, because it's not even gay if it's you yourself, right? I'm like, yeah, this is a very egotistical, masturbatory situation going on here. And it seemed like for a moment he was feeling it, but at the end of the day, he was like, I don't need anyone, So it's like, you're pathetic, and it's like, was he saying that to Doppelganger, or was that supposed to be aimed at himself? Could be a combination of the two, but for him, it's like, I don't need people's love. I don't need anything. I don't need anyone. And he snaps his neck. And it's like, that's gotta fuck with you a little bit, because I was like, is Doppelganger going to turn back into himself when he's dead? It's like, oh no, he stays looking like you. I mean, who knows, like, maybe after a while he eventually reverts, but it's like, that's gotta be a little weird. But I think there's also like this psychotic catharsis to it, like, oh, I killed myself. It's like, no, I'm done being weak. I'm tired of, I'm not going to be held down by like me wanting people, like, I'm done with people wanting people to love me. Now, this speaks so much volumes about what's this mean for his relationship with Ryan. Like, Ryan hates you and everything, so it's going to be a thing of like, is that going to be the point where he's like, you know what? Fuck being a dad. I don't care about the kid. The kid doesn't love me. I don't give a shit. Or maybe it's kind of a thing of, no, I'll take the kid. I'm going to raise him to be a hero. I don't give a damn if you don't like me. I'm not here to be a lovey father. It's like, no, I'm going to raise you. You're eventually going to take command and join the Seven. You're going to be my legacy. Maybe that type of thing. I don't know. But I think he's done, being placated. Like, the fact of the matter is, or rather pacified by other people. Like he's like, I'm done with people's love. And I think this is going to be the real, like, oh, watch out. Because that Homelander, like, he kept up appearance. This Homelander might keep up those appearances, but eventually he's going to drop them. Because he's like, at this point, basically him saying that makes me go, oh, I don't give a shit about anything, anyone on this planet. Fuck everybody type of thing. That's the kind of vibe I'm getting. So if that ends up being the case, I don't know. Something that's also interesting, too, is like the ending. There's no music at the end. It's just the fireplace crackling. The entire outro is that, because I was skipping through, I was like, oh, the credits, it's like, there's no music. And I think that's an interesting choice to kind of reflect that situation. I'm like, holy crap. Well, this was a great episode, dude. I'm so interested where the hell the next episode is going to take us with all of this. We are at what I believe to be the halfway point of the season, because I think someone had said this season is only 8 episodes as well, so we're at the halfway point. I know shit's just going to get even crazier from here. I cannot wait to continue down this route. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.